Hey, Clemson family, welcome to the second episode of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. We're going to be your source for analysis of the Tigers in 2022. I really want to start out by thanking everyone for a big reaction to the first episode. It was great to see so many people giving us a listen. Hopefully, we'll earn your loyalty as we continue to get better at this. I'm Bill Zimmerman, and today we're going to get into the buzz around the new ACC schedule format, that 3x5x5 you might have been hearing about. The big focus today is going to be on our first position preview for the 2022 season. We're going to start that journey with a high note about the defensive tackles. There's a couple more things we'll get into today.
Yeah, hey, this is Daniel Shirley. We've got a lot to get to today in 1 week and everything that's going on. Baseball assistant hires, the staff is taking shape for Eric Baggage. And then another big commitment that happened just this afternoon, just about an hour ago. And we'll break that down for you here on the show as well.
Awesome. As we mentioned, that schedule is getting a lot of talk out there right now, that 3x5x5 format. I think everybody's kind of got an opinion on who the three should have been, whether they're Clemson grad or another ACC school fan. What was your quick reaction to that? What hit you right out of the gate when you saw that?
Yeah, I love it. I love it for the ACC overall. I think it's the right way to go. I think the divisions have worked. But now I think that the divisions have kind of lost their usefulness. And I think this is the best way for the conference to move forward. You want to have the two best teams in the conference play in the championship game. You really don't need a 6-6 division champ playing a really good team on the other side. And we've seen that a lot in the ACC. So for Clemson specifically, I like the three teams that they picked for Clemson. NC State has a history with Clemson. The Textile Bowl. I remember when they first started calling that game the Textile Bowl in the mid-'80s. I was at the first one. And so that makes sense. Georgia Tech is now will be the longest uninterrupted series for Clemson, with Wake Forest dropping off the yearly series or the yearly schedule, and the South Carolina game being canceled a couple of years ago because of COVID. So now Georgia Tech is the longest running series for Clemson. So that makes sense. And then Florida State just makes sense. I mean, the two best teams in their division for a long time, those two teams dominated this conference for many, many years. So it just makes sense that they would be on the yearly schedule. So, and then the thing, Bill, that I like is, okay, so you're not going to play Wake Forest every other year or whoever every other year. You're going to see every team in the conference every other season. And you're going to play in every stadium in the conference every 4 years. So I think that's just a great move for the ACC. And I like what they've done with this decision and several other decisions since Jim Phillips became the commissioner. I think they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I would have liked to see us get into Virginia more often. I think if I was going to try to read Dabo Sweeney's mind or Jordan Sorrell's mind, I would think recruiting wise, they like that Georgia Tech series. They like going into Atlanta, being there every other year, having that presence in the Peach State as much as they can. Same thing with FSU going into Florida on a regular basis. Even though the Panhandle's not much of a recruiting hotbed for talent, you're in that state. Florida State is relevant everywhere, all over the state. You got FSU grads in Orlando. You got FSU grads in Tampa. You got FSU grads in Miami. There are so many schools in the state of North Carolina that you're going to get in there a couple times a year, whether or not you play NC State every year. And so it might have been a little more beneficial to get up into Virginia, have the Hokies on the schedule more often, or have the Cavs on the schedule more often. But I think the bigger thing about this is attendance for a lot of schools. Like, look, we're already kind of tired of playing Boston College every year, aren't we? We're kind of tired of playing Syracuse every year. And you know, there's been a little more of a rivalry thanks to Syracuse, unfortunately, upsetting Clemson, and playing them tough and kind of casting doubt on Clemson, even when they didn't necessarily beat Clemson. But you look at a school like Louisville, you look at a school like Wake Forest, and do they really want their fans to have to come out 3 or 4 times every year for a Syracuse game, a Boston College game? You know, whoever, some of these newer schools that are coming into the ACC and those divisional rivalries, and it's like, well, gosh, we play these guys all the time. I got a 60-inch TV at home and a comfortable couch and cheap cold beverages. Why do I want to fight all the traffic and and try to go to a stadium for these games if they're getting kind of old? And so I think being able to mix it up, get more schools on campus more often, is really going to help the conference kind of drum up some team support again here and there. So hopefully that's going to have a big benefit. And of course, everybody's talking about the playoff implications, right?
Right. Well, we saw that the one year that the ACC didn't have divisions, and look, it was kind of forced. Their hand was forced with what happened with COVID, but look how it worked out. Notre Dame was in the conference for that one year. And I know that's not what's happening here, but Notre Dame was in the conference for the one year, and Clemson and Notre Dame both got into the playoffs. So I really believe this is the right move for the conference. I'm glad they're doing it. I kind of wish they would just get rid of the divisions this year. I know that that's not really allowed with what's going on with the NCAA. This is for 2023. But I really believe this is the right move. It's funny. I put out a list of my own picks about a couple of months ago when all this talk started, back in May, of the teams that I thought would make the most sense. And for me, I did NC State. I kept the 4 North Carolina schools together. So that would take NC State out of the mix for Clemson. And I added Louisville. So I had Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Louisville for Clemson. Travel-wise, it's not that bad. I know Clemson and Louisville don't have a long-standing rivalry, but 4 or 5 of the games they've played have been really, really close, including a couple of gold line stands on the last few plays of the game. So
yep.
I thought that would make sense, but I like what the ACC's done. I think it's fine. I ran into a Florida State fan today, and he said, "Why do we have to go to Syracuse? We don't want to go to Syracuse every other year." But, with 14 teams, Bill, the thing that I found with this, with 14 teams, it was going to be hard to please everybody. And it wasn't going to be perfect for everybody. And, you look, if you're Florida State, he said, we got Clemson and Miami on our schedule every year. And how is that fair? It's great for attendance, you would think, but it really is going to put some pressure on you. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think it's a great move. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun for ACC teams. And I think it brings, kind of what you were saying, it brings the conference a little bit closer. Because if you're Virginia and you haven't seen Syracuse in 5 years, do you really feel like you're the same conference? It doesn't. This makes you have more of a cohesive feel to the conference.
Yeah, I was amazed. One of the things I saw was that the old Big East rivalry of Miami and Syracuse, Miami has not played at Syracuse yet since they've been in the conference.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. It's hard. The one that kind of jumped out to me, and Grace Rayner mentioned it on The Athletic this afternoon, is Virginia Tech and Miami not playing each other every year.
Yeah.
That's one that's going to go by the wayside, and it stinks, but you will at least play them every other year. You will at least play in their stadium every 4 years. So there is that, and we'll get used to this as we move forward, but it sure feels like the right move.
Yeah, and what I would say to that Florida State fan you ran into, if you see them again, is one of the things I've been thinking about. Clemson's not going to have that built-in long travel trip all the way to either Syracuse or Boston College every year from now on. And then how often have we seen that game end up being a Thursday night or a Friday night too? Right. So it's nice that that's going away, and goodness, please don't ever end up having that be like both in the same schedule, because that long of a travel day really does make a big difference, doesn't it?
Especially those Friday night games. I hate the Friday night games. I'm a traditionalist, I guess. I love high school football on Friday nights. College games should not be played on Friday nights. And I know why they do it. It's because college at one time dominated Thursday, and now the NFL has taken over Thursday, and it needs to find that other weeknight to take over. But I'm not a fan of it. I'm with you. I don't like Clemson having to make that trip every year, or at least once with one of those teams. So I think they did pretty well for Clemson. I really do. Traditional wise, with the the series with Georgia Tech, the rivalry with Florida State, the Textile Bowl with NC State, this makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Well, when they do line up and play, whoever we face, wherever we go this year, starting with at Georgia Tech, the Clemson defensive line is going to get a lot of attention, a lot more attention than this 3x5x5 schedule. once we get things going, once we get to Labor Day and beyond. So, boy, I don't even know where to begin. Do you start with Miles Murphy? Do you start with Bryan Bresee? Do you start with Tyler Davis? Do you start with Xavier Thomas? I mean, and then, you've even got guys like KJ Henry. You've got Ruka Rororo, who really emerged last year. This group is so deep. But today, let's talk about the tackles, and let's start out with Tyler Davis and Bryan Bresee, who we both know those guys are firm starters and firm NFL prospects.
Yeah, they are, and there's no doubt Tyler Davis is as good a player as we've seen come through Clemson. I mean, he's right up there with some of the best defensive tackles the program's ever had, and Bryan Bresee could even be even better, right? I mean, he could be a generational type talent. Now he had the injury last year, still made third team All ACC, which is hard to believe when he hurt in the NC State game. That's how good he is, but he's back. All reports is that he's going to be 100% healthy and ready for the start of the season. So those two guys in the middle are going to cause a lot of havoc. And look, Bill, we saw it last year with Georgia's defensive front. Those two guys in the middle of the defensive front caused a lot of problems. And when you can't block those two guys as an offense, you can't do anything. And that's what I think you're going to see from those two guys up front. But then there's a lot of depth behind them as well, which, like you mentioned, Rook and Ruben, those two players got a lot of experience last year, and I expect them to be even better this year.
Yeah, I do. And the very good news that I saw from Trey Williams' Twitter account, he is back on the field after 7 months away. He played some hurt even before he had to go out last year and disappear, but he really emerged. So, and he's a mountain of a guy, isn't he? So,
Right.
This group is very deep in that top, four. Like when Aroro comes in, he really proved himself last year. When Williams comes in, he really proved himself last year. And so you can spell a guy like Bresee, spell a guy like Davis too, who has had a few injuries here and there, especially his sophomore year. He missed considerable amount of time, and he was a difference maker. Like that Clemson defense, his sophomore year, 2 years ago, that was a different defense when Davis couldn't be on the field. And when they took on Miami and just absolutely shut down De'Aaron King, and they were able to kind of constrict and own their spaces and kind of move in on King, keep him contained. Davis was one of the big reasons why. He's kind of a sneaky guy. Maybe I pay a little more attention because he's a Central Florida guy like me. He's from, Bresee. The potential is just unbelievable. He flashed as a freshman. But he's also a pretty steady presence. He earned a lot of playing time as a true freshman, which is not something that then defensive coordinator Brent Venables was just giving out like candy, right? Some guys earn it, and he's willing to give it. You've seen Andrew Makuba, you've seen Dexter Lawrence, and a few other guys really step up as freshmen, Christian Wilkins. So he's been willing to give it. This defensive tackles group is not going to have to look at freshmen. Everybody is back. The closest thing to a freshman, I would say, would be third stringer DeMonte Capehart, who might even be a fourth stringer because Ruben is so reliable and Peyton Page is moving up as a sophomore. But Capehart was very highly rated and regarded by at least one recruiting analyst as a terrific fit for what Clemson likes to run. And so he could be a sneaky contributor this year as well. That's 7 names, right? And we're high on all of them.
Well, I mean, just think about either Peyton Page or Capehart are going to be a fourth string guy.
Yeah.
So think about that. That's just scary. I can't wait to watch Page this year. I want to see how he develops because he's a first string talent. And, he's so young. He got some playing time last year, but not a lot. Because of all the talent in front of him. But all reports are that he really looked good in the spring. And we'll see what he becomes. But him and same thing with Capehart. I mean, those two players are really on the upswing. And I can't wait to see what they become this year.
again, like I mentioned in the first episode, linebackers are deep. You wonder, all right, who around, week 4 or as the season gets going, if they don't see their playing time being what they want it to be, are they going to stay? But this is a group that is so deep that you just wish a guy well if he moves on. You've seen that before at defensive tackle. It's all the way back to Scott Pagano in recent years. You saw it with Niles Pinckney. You saw it with Jordan Williams. Xavier Kelly was more of a defensive end, but he was kind of a hybrid guy at the end there. So we may not be talking about all 7 of these guys by the time we get to the bye week of the season. But what a group this is. I mean, I can't think of another one in the country this year that rivals it.
Yeah, I can't either. And the thing about it, Bill, is if these guys were going to leave, I think they probably would have left already, right? I mean, Rook is a graduate student. Ruben is a junior. So those, I would have thought if they were going to move, we would have seen that already. So I think you're going to have all these guys. I really feel like that. And I mean, just a talented group, 1 to 7. If anybody gets hurt, and you hope nobody gets hurt again, but we've seen Tyler Davis get hurt. We've seen Bryan Bresee get hurt, like we said, and these other players have stepped up and really taken advantage of it. That's the most impressive thing to me is those guys who stepped into these spots last year. Trey Williams played hurt, where he was hurt most of the year last year, and he still played, and hopefully he can get healthy. But to see that these players took advantage of their opportunity, to me is really, really impressive, and I think you'll see that again this year. I really do believe you're looking at a dominant defensive group, especially in the middle. What those guys will become this season as a group is really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be even-handed. I try to take off my alumni hat and look at this as more of an analyst and a journalist and find where's the weakness. And boy, I really struggle. Do you have any concerns about the defensive tackle group this year?
I guess just injuries. I mean, that's really the only thing that you would look at and say what is going to hold this group back. But again, we've seen those other players step up and take advantage. That's again, like I would, if somebody does get hurt this year, I'd love to see Cape Hart take that next step. I'd love to see Peyton Page take that next step. They have the talent. They certainly have the talent. It's just they've got to get it done if they get their chances, and I believe they will.
Yep. Peyton Page, I believe, if I remember right, was the only take at defensive tackle in that recruiting class. He was their only offer. He was their, one and only. And when he came through, they said, this is our guy. And he's the one they want. And I'll tell you, you hear some people banging on the job Todd Bates did, and especially at the end, but the proof is there. Like, look at this group and what a bunch that Nick Eason can inherit talent wise. And, when you see them on the vlog, when you hear them in interviews, they got their heads screwed on straight. It sure seems like, and I don't think they're going to skip a beat moving forward with Nick Eason, and we've talked about the job he's done recruiting as well already. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I love what Coach Eason has done coaching these groups. Just in the last 6 months of being with the team, and now we're going to see it in games. Right, we're going to see how these guys react to him, and where we go from there. And that's going to be a lot of fun to this season. But I don't think there's any doubt that the talent is really, really there for this group and could be a dominant group.
When they hired Eason, I didn't really have a good recollection of just how much NFL experience he had. And even though he's got less experience as a coach, Auburn, for all its faults last year, the defensive line wasn't really one of them, especially in the interior. So, and again, with such a good and deep and experienced group, it should be a fabulous transition year for him to just kind of keep this rolling. So, boy, I'm really excited about the defensive tackles without a doubt. So, and on the other side of the trenches, some big news as we record this today. We'll be posting on Thursday, but Wednesday, a major commit for the offensive line, and that's a position of need.
Yeah, definitely. And we've talked about that. You and I have talked about that offensive line is a huge need for this team, and has to be a place that they have improvement over last year. Now, this young man won't be on this team this year. He'll be on next year's team. But Harris Sewell is a young man from Texas. He's a 4-star, and he, from all reports, from all the recruiting sites, and I checked them out since the announcement at 1:00, they are all very high on him and what he can become. And he's a big time get. There's no doubt about that. And you talk about recruiting and where this group is going. The players in the class keep talking about top five class, and it certainly looks like a top 5 class. And now you've got Ian Reed and Harris Sewell on the board with the offensive line. There's a couple of more out there that they have a shot at. Anna Adams from 24/7 tweeted out that Sewell will be the highest ranked interior offensive lineman to sign with Clemson since Dabo Swinney's been the head coach. And that's a big time step forward.
Yeah. And Anna clearly knows the territory. She's been on the Clemson beat quite a long time. Terrific follow on Twitter. Harris Sewell is exactly the kind of guy they need. Like, they needed that first guy in Ian Reed, and he also has a ton of promise. But boy, there was a lot of buzz when Clemson signed Jackson Carman, 4 years ago now, I think it was, and how highly rated he was. And this guy is even higher. And Ohio, I'm not going to knock Ohio football. So I was going to say, from the state of Texas, maybe even a little more qualified, but there's a lot of good linemen from both states out there. So the Texas connection continues to build at Clemson. It seems like Brent Venables kind of established that pipeline of talent, if you will. But this kind of shows that, hey, you don't need Venables to go into the state of Texas and get a guy who you really need. And who knows, maybe Venables sent GPS directions to Thomas Austin last year to get to know this guy. But what a get for Thomas Austin. And there's a projection of a third major name coming next week for this offensive line group, which would also be huge. We'll wait and see if that holds. But just to get Sewell in the bunch alongside Reed, I think one of my hopes is that this will open some eyes for some skill player guys, because you and I have talked about this. I've put it out there on Twitter, message boards here and there. Like, I worry that if guys think their quarterback won't have time, or if they won't have holes to run the ball, are they really gonna, in the final decision process, choose Clemson? And having gotten 2 really good, tough freshmen in last year's class who might contribute this year, and now adding at least 2 more and probably a third, from the sound of things, maybe more. I think they do want to take 4 this year, don't they? So
yeah, Anna again mentioned several names that they're still in the mix for. So I 4 makes sense. I don't think they're done with 2 or maybe 3, but it all starts up front, Bill. I know people get excited about receivers and they get excited about running backs and tight ends, and all that's true. You have to have talent. But if you have that talent and you can't function up front, none of it's going to work. I don't care what scheme you play. I don't care what kind of quarterback you have. If you can't block up front, none of that is going to matter. And Clemson saw that last year. The offense really struggled. They still won 10 games, but a lot of that was because of their defense. And if you go back, look how many one-score games this team played. And the Louisville game jumps out. Florida State, I know it didn't end up 1 score, but it was late in the 4th quarter. Boston College, Syracuse, Georgia Tech. So those are games that in the past Clemson has won easily, and they had to scratch and claw and do everything they could because the offensive line was a real struggle. So really excited to see what Thomas Austin has done here. If he can add a couple of more pieces, maybe people will get back on board. I know there's been some maybe grinding of teeth about he's not experienced enough or whatever. I'm a big fan. I think he's going to do a great job, and he's going to be a superstar in coaching. It takes time. It's not going to happen automatically, but I think you're looking at something special with Thomas Austin. And it starts with this class, and they're off to a great start.
Yeah, Austin, again, some sneaky NFL experience, and definitely not on the same level as Nick Eason. But I think I looked it up, and there are about 4 years where about 3 seasons on a practice squad and one on an active roster. So he's had extended time in the NFL. He knows what it takes, and whether it was injuries or whether it was just talent that kept him from getting on the field on a regular basis, he's been in that environment. He knows what it takes. He understands. All right, if you're going to make it in the NFL, you'd better learn this now. You better learn this in your 3 to 5 years of college football, and certainly was a standout for us on the field in ACC play. So I'm a big fan. He's been around as an analyst. He's been close to the program. He understands how things are working. And then is it Tyrone Crowder is his analyst?
Tyrone Crowder is working with him as well. That's right.
Another familiar name, another guy who executed for Clemson at a high level in the trenches there. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to see if he changes the scheme, if he and Brandon Streeter kind of put their heads together, if they keep trying to run that sort of inverted veer based kind of blocking scheme, that zone blocking scheme that they've been running. I know it's not pure inverted veer, but there's some elements of that in there. Or it seemed like in short yardage, you looked at Wayne Gallman and Travis Etienne for several years, and they were ducking through a hole that was sort of open side to side when they were able to gain, a first down or short touchdown down near the goal line. You didn't have that surge forward that you see from Alabama, that you see from Ohio State, that you see from a lot of the traditional powers. So we'll see if he can introduce that element. Depends who he's got, depends really how the offense needs to be run. But I've got high hopes, and getting a guy like Harris Sewell in there to commit is a huge part of it, especially beating out the Texas Longhorns after they added Arch Manning. For this guy to choose Clemson is no small feat.
No, not at all. You are beating out good teams to get these players. And look, it's, again, we'll see what else they add. But what a great month of June. I mean, 12 really strong commitments. I've seen a couple of the sites call it the Dandy Dozen. We remember the original Dandy Dozen with Todd, those guys. So if this group can turn out like that, they're going to end up having more players. But what a great month of June, when maybe this time a month ago, there were some people worried about this class. It's really, really starting to come together.
Yep. And also moving over to another sport, a big month of additions for Clemson baseball, with Eric Bakich joining the fray and taking over the program. And now we know who 3 guys at least of his staff are going to be.
Yeah, we do. It's really come together. I like what I've seen from this group and what Coach Bakich is trying to do. The 2 most recent hires, Jimmy Bellinger was named the pitching coach, and you look at what he's done at Florida State. Bill, he's 35 years old, but he's been a full-time assistant for 13 years.
Wow.
He jumped right in. He's been at Monmouth, he's been at Maryland, Kentucky, and he did a really good job the last couple of years at Florida State. And then just today, that 3rd volunteer assistant was named, Griffin Mazur, that is coming with Coach Bakich from Michigan. So it's the 2nd member of that Michigan staff who's coming with Coach Bakich from Michigan. And Griffin played for Michigan for 1 year. He played at UC Irvine before that for 4 years, and then moved over and played 1 year at Michigan, and then was an assistant last year at Michigan. He's a young guy, 25 years old, really talented, kind of seen as an up-and-coming name in the coaching profession. So I think you're going to see him be a really good addition as well.
Yeah, with Nick Schnabel coming over from Michigan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That kind of gives some continuity, I think, for Bakich. Even if they aren't bringing their pitching coach with them, they certainly got a very qualified guy, a very accomplished guy in Bellinger. So hopefully there's going to be some staff cohesiveness there. A low common thread there for Maryland, right, with Bellinger and with Bakich. So I don't know if they were there at the same time, but it tends to make the circle a little smaller when you have those common paths, right? So
it's a small world, and these guys know each other, and it's good to see. It's good to see the staff come together that quickly, right? Because the freshmen are on campus now, and you need you need the coaches and the players there working together. So it's really coming together.
I wonder if they're going to hit the transfer portal. We've seen a couple of players come over from Michigan already. We've also seen some Clemson guys depart already. So some holes in the roster there they're going to have to fill. I would imagine it might be a little easier to hit that portal and some familiar faces rather than try to immediately make a ton of inroads with high school kids, especially when those high school kids might be juggling, which colleges might fall back for the MLB draft. Like those guys, those young men have a lot on their minds and several different directions that they got to think about. So I wonder how hard they're going to hit the portal and start working on the roster. But fortunately, the biggest pieces appear to remain intact, and Max Wagner and Caden Grice, and with several of the pitchers who were the major contributors last year. I'm pretty excited about the energy that's around the program, and I hope they're going to be able to take that and turn that into some quick successes with talent as well.
Yeah, well, and the last 2 years has been rough. That 2020 team got off to a great start, and everybody thought, okay, well, maybe they've got it turned around. Obviously, the season didn't finish for those reasons with COVID. And then this year got off to a great start. And then it just went right off the rails very quickly once ACC play started. So there seems to be a little juice about the program. Can't wait to see who these coaches bring in. It sounds like they will be active in the transfer portal. You mentioned there's a couple of players from Michigan who've announced that they're coming. I would imagine there will be more transfers coming with this group. And then I can't wait to see what this staff can get done, because this is a really impressive coaching staff that Coach Bakich has put together.
Yeah, I hope someone can teach these guys what to do with the glove. It was kind of crazy to see just how bad the fielding was. And look, that's a corner that has to be cut sometimes in recruiting, but you have to develop that fielding ability there. And so that's if they can handle that alone and keep everything else steady, I think that's going to put more wins on the schedule for them next year.
I think so. And how many times did I text you about how bad the team was fundamentally the last 2 years?
Right.
And when you hear Coach Bakich say during his introductory news conference that we are going to be strong fundamentally, I almost fell out of my chair. I was so excited. So, we'll see. They once the games start, we'll find out. But there is a basis of fundamentals within Coach Bakich. And you watch Michigan play; they were very strong fundamentally. They didn't pitch as well this year as his previous teams had, but they've been very strong fundamentally, and I think you'll see that from this staff and from this program.
A ton going on around Clemson. We were also going to start our peek at opponents for the upcoming football season, and we just filled up too much. We don't want to turn this into a 60, 90-minute podcast. We want to keep this, as quick hit as we can. So, maybe next time, if it's a little quieter, we'll get into previewing Georgia Tech a little bit. We'll also definitely next time move from defensive tackles to defensive ends as a position preview. We'll keep you posted if anything else happens with baseball. We'll keep you posted on other sports as well. Eventually, we'll get into a soccer preview, right? I hope we're giving everyone what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And who knows what's going to happen with recruiting. So that'll be fun to talk about as well. But we're getting down to it, and it's almost time for the season, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely a lot going on. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. And Clemson family, we are glad you found us. Go ahead and smash that follow button or subscribe button if Google Podcasts ever uploads us there. We don't want you to miss out anytime we post with everything that's going on around Tiger Town. If you can give us a like or give us a rating while you're at it, we'd sure appreciate that. You can also follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff and on Facebook at Reign Supreme Alway. And until next time, go Tigers.